It is conceivable that a 13 billion year evolution or expansions from time equals 0 at a big bang could be completed in 13.3 seconds or fewer in a time step forward or time reverse process. If dimensions and mass contents of time are subject to an overall field strength determined by God, the form and content of any given universe might be instantly determined from hydrogen atoms to stars, galaxies like black holes, and information phenomena experienced within a universe with sentient beings. So how did you go about mind mapping a multiverse, John? I thought about making a reply. The instant extended farther than it might have into the future, making the most out of time for reflection on a topic dropped from the sky. 10 seconds passed before I asked Charlene, do you favor complex descriptions or prefer melted down models? Charlene Crace, a superb cook, is a fashion theorist in many universes unknown to her. Yet in this one, she is a practical and accomplished historio-philosoph, economist, tile setter. Her reply was, as expected, direct. Complexities can be regarded as tiles for themselves within a relativist mosaic. Meltdown models, simplified, simpering ready for consumption, have fewer connections to adjoining explanatory tiles. They are puppies of limited horizon. One must track farther from the meltdown model's edge to locate a primary tile's horizon. It is better to start with the complexity in itself that encompasses the initial meltdown model. I said, with that being a good opinion, I need say that mind mapping a multiverse wherein mind itself necessarily has an implicit capacity to branch is, on the surface of it, a complexity so far as making a recursive description of it goes. Each thought in every mind has a physical foundation, a reality for itself. Every thought stirs the brain to make subtle chemical changes at a quantum level, and there is a universe existing corresponding to each quantum wave difference, however minuscule. A universe exists with every possible quantum variation comprising an infinite scale of universes with every shade of gray location of each particle. Yes, Charlene, every universe that God has imagined or thought to be is superpositioned on all possible variations. Human conscious thought branches into the right universe that free will actualizes with every thought that develops. How would one have a continuum of mind if mind switches into the right different universe corresponding to the new thought structure? It seems as if one would rather have a nearly infinite multiple personality, John. Initially, one might guess that each mind is already existing independently in every possible universe. If one dropped into another universe mid-thought and kept one's own, then one might have two minds in the new brain, and those might keep adding up with each new thought as one journeyed nearly infinitely along with every new thought from universe to universe. The universe branching occurs automatically, though, rather than with any conscious awareness of the branch to another universe suitable for the new thought. If mind were to compile as an infinite addition of mind to new self-mind, that would perhaps bring one to the level of a little God condition, with all those minds coordinating with serial processing of thought. For the latter two reasons, I would dismiss the concatenation of minds from universe switching from likely possibilities. Well, John, cosmology has two main components, structure and composition. Mind slipping through a variegation of subtly different universes would seem to transcend the structure of universes on the face of it, and probably the composition too. Mind is different than matter, even though it is based in matter. While mind and its thoughts may slip into permutation, universe is appropriate for the idea. The universes may pre-exist the arrival of mind, and mind may occupy the live universe like electricity, lifting up a previously dark bulb. Then what about the other minds, John? Those living in each universe, aren't just androids or play figures. They're real, aren't they? Sure, they are real, and potentially are occupied by the correct mind for some individual, branching at their own time. Yet each universe is pre-created physically by God and fully developed from beginning to end. God has accounted for every possible thought that anyone might have, and though one is free to think whatever one wishes, here there will be a ready physical universe appropriate for that thought, waiting for a mind to arrive at the right moment. One would expect an omnipotent and omniscient God to have actualized every possible universe, at least as an idea. Idea for God transcends human ideas about what mind and matter are. Ideas of God may appear as matter in some contexts of perception for others. Quantum waves may have a superposition in correspondence at the cosmological scale, where every possible universe is selected as observed. God pre-knowing each possible wave function of any and all minds selection, John. Superposition strategy. Charlene poured a cone of coffee for me, an expensive import from a Europe-like world N9 with bean descended from the original Isles of Yarth. I stirred in 2 packets of inocuous sugar that provided a little immunity from a nanovirus brain-eating disease. Char, every possible universe that could be made to exist does exist, and in an infinite number of variations and permutations from every possible choice and evolution anyone or anything could take. The human soul is spirit and branches off into another universe, appropriate for its thought, with each thought it takes. God foreknows every possible universe that he has created or entails from eternity in all directions. So, John, there are not an infinite number of me occupying all of those universes. No, the time of each is a non sequitur. All of the past, presents, and futures in each of the infinite universes exist in the eternal now of God. They're like static scenes that come alive when the soul is in any given universe. Then how could 2 people share the same universe for a significant period of time and relativistically travel together? For a human being, calculating the mechanics might indeed be quite difficult, even impossibly so. For God, though, it is nothing. Consider that the sum over the histories of world lines and all possible positions of quantum superpositions before waveform collapse, before viewing, are apparent phenomena given unto observers. The all possible positions of the given quantum particle actually correspond to an infinity of universes where the particle is in a different position. That phenomena occurs for every possible particle and virtual particle in existence. Necessarily, time, like spatial quanta, is also formed with quantum superposition. Select quanta are given into every possible time position that are for themselves spatial locations. The multiverse is static, with a contingent existence fully actualized within God's eternal now. For human observers, however, time and space seem to be in motion relativistically, as if membranes from higher dimensions were passing through one another, creating the appearance of time and spatial dimension. That's one way of looking at it. I realize that even the traditional approach, with waveform collapse making a steady state material universe, tends to leave one philosophically wondering if they can see farther from the mountaintop through the fog. Remember that some of these points about subjectivity in the Schrödinger wave function. The wave function could be a state of mind, of subjective experience, yet it might be a problem of the criterion that is within an Everett interpretation of mind or experience, moves through a multidimensional matrix. I think that it is not entirely inconsistent with the Copenhagen interpretation, epistemologically viewing matter and energy through a glass darkly with partial certainty. Wave-particle superposition is a paradigm of contemporary thought about how the quantum fields exist that could be inaccurate. So the Copenhagen paradigm could be incapable of determining what's what, though. Useful in the standard model field for working with matter that would comprise a philosophical and pragmatic difference of depth. There are innumerable forms the fundamental field could be in to allow the appearance of quanta and space-time to exist along with faster-than-light distance interval transcendence. People naturally think of circles and spherical packing with the unitary field shaking or vibrating to emit one-dimensional membranes building up to large quanta. All that minimalist quanta remains tied into the unitary field and might be regarded as complex illusions that are yet real for building up to a level where self-awareness occurs. Experiencing this steady-state temporal field is real. Transcending experimentally to deeper micro levels through space-time to form forms of quanta outside of time individually, as quanta may let innumerable relativity-breaking phenomenal observations occur. Space membranes may have irregular shapes that, when intersecting, provide irregular rates of apparent time passage. They may alternatively have regular shapes that, when intersecting or passing through other membranes, provide an apparent smooth rate of expansion of space-time resembling that of dark energy. Dark energy is regarded preponderantly as responsible for the increased rate of expansion of the space of the observable universe. Cosmologists think the rate of expansion of space and time will continue until a big rip occurs when the universe is 64 billion years old, where it whereat it will cease to exist, failing to draw social security benefits itself from an economics expanded with Federal Reserve zero-interest loans. Membranes capable of being an entire universe when intersecting at various angles or portions contacting must be of very large size, one might think. Size is relative to thought. Though in a completely empty void, a 1-inch membrane might as well be a mile. Only in relation to other membranes or things could comparative quantification occur. If a membrane is not of zero dimensions, simultaneously existing yet not existing, logically somewhat absurd, except perhaps for quantity in some form of superposition, even with a timeless eternal form, then it must be made of something. In a field, particles arise of various sizes as energy wave packets. A membrane, though, is regarded as some kind of fundamental entity without parts. Irreducible membranes, one dimension, even seem less probable in superposition zero-dimensional membranes that take one dimension with interference, observation, and waveform collapse, or simply the Word of God. A membrane of n dimensions may be a quantified field in the mind of God, initially structured in a spiritual sense, that with interference and intersections collapses from the superpositions of the mind of God into one-dimensional and concatenated dimensional forms. Recombinant dimensional membranes, perhaps with an unknown forms of charge, perhaps multitensorial charges, could build up superdimensions with greater magnitudes than other membranes. This shape of the universe, spatially speaking, was and probably is of interest to cosmologists. It could have been toroidal, spherical, etc. Perhaps there is no clearly definable shape for a universe at the leading, expanding edges, whereas it fades off into nothingness, emptier than nothing itself. It may simply be an apparent universe with apparent yet not real space that is instead a concatenated and apparent effect for observers from one-dimensional membranes moving through one another, like a cell that expands in size yet has no edges. One membrane passing along the axis of another may appear as an acceleration of spatial expansion to local observers. Any sort of turn or deflection for a membrane shape would require some irregularity of force acting at that place. This presence or absence of planar deformation or of spherical deformation, if a singularity indicates the presence of a heterodox field or membrane element. Maybe some theorists regard individuated endowments of force as fundamental branes with the optimal shape for a brain corresponding to the configuration of dimensions in which it coheres. Dimensional branes thus appear to be theoretically embedded within a Chinese puzzle box of additional dimensional branes. In evolutionary biology, there's an argument that mutation is the primary agent for change rather than natural selection. Mutation, though, is a way of saying change of an individual from an existing pattern. The capacity for mutability is an implicit aspect of being. God may be changeless and eternal, yet space-time beings change perpetually. Mutation, however, is regarded as occurring to living beings rather than to inanimate molecular forms. Complexity in biological forms allows for a suggestion of mutation from an existing pattern, whereas for geological formations, talus slopes, for example, are said to evolve under the influence of the second law of thermodynamics, entropy with the increase of disorder. Can dimensional membranes be thought of as mutable, or are they just too simple even to be considered to evolve? Relationships of membranes that change in the field of all possible membranes existing might be regarded as evolving. Evolution occurs in the space-time changes for observers living in a nexus of interacting membranes. For God hosting the membrane field, nothing changes in a sense. The membrane's position and motion follow his will. Intellect of observers changes too, yet as in a level 4 multiverse, intellect is an apparent phenomenon embedded in the interacting membrane fields. It is predetermined, though, able apparently to modify energy matter forms in a small way within a space-time manifold. God configured the complete field from eternity with space-time membranes comprising contingent ontology for others.